Have you ever watched your own father mock your career choices in front of 200 industry executives, only to discover seconds later that you're actually his new boss? That's exactly what happened to me 3 weeks ago at the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan. My father, Richard Chen, CEO of Chen Industries, stood at a podium celebrating his company's acquisition, making jokes about his daughter who wastes her time with startups while the adults do real business. What he didn't know was that the mysterious private equity firm acquiring his legacy was mine. I'm Sarah Chen, 31 years old, and this is the story of how my father's 60 seconds of public humiliation became his last 60 seconds of power. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The Chen family built their fortune on precision manufacturing. My grandfather started Chen Industries in 1962, turning a small machine shop in Queens into a $400 million automotive parts empire. By the time my father took over in 1995, we supplied components to every major car manufacturer in North America. Growing up, I understood that Chen Industries wasn't just a business. It was the family identity, our legacy, our proof of the American dream realized through hard work and engineering excellence. My father never let me forget what that legacy meant. Every family dinner included updates on production numbers, supplier negotiations, and expansion plans. My older brother David, 4 years my senior, absorbed these lessons like oxygen. By 16, he could discuss alloy compositions and tolerances. By 20, he was working summers on the factory floor. By 25, he was VP of Operations, groomed to eventually inherit the throne. I was different. While David memorized manufacturing specifications, I was building websites in my bedroom. While he toured our factories, I was teaching myself to code. When family conversations turned to production efficiency, I'd slip away to research tech startups and venture capital. My father's disappointment wasn't subtle. Sarah lives in a fantasy world, he'd tell relatives at gatherings. She thinks you can build a real business with computers and venture capital nonsense. David understands manufacturing, tangible products, real value creation. Sarah just wants to play with apps. The breaking point came when I was 22, fresh out of NYU with a degree in business and computer science. My father expected me to join Chen Industries, start at the bottom like David had, learn the family business from the ground up. Instead, I announced at Sunday dinner that I'd accepted a position at a small venture capital firm in Soho. Venture capital, my father repeated, his chopsticks frozen midair. You're going to gamble other people's money on kids with PowerPoint presentations. This is what your education was for? My mother tried to smooth things over, but my father was just getting started. Do you know what real business looks like, Sarah? It's metal, it's machines, it's products you can hold in your hands. Not some fantasy about apps and algorithms. You're throwing away a real future for Silicon Valley dreams. David, sitting across from me, said nothing. He didn't have to. His silence was agreement enough. I took the job anyway. That decision created a rift that never really healed. For the next 9 years, I became the family disappointment, the daughter who chose tech over tradition, who valued innovation over inheritance. Family dinners became performances where my father would ask pointed questions designed to highlight my failures. How's that startup you invested in, Sarah? Oh, it folded. What a surprise. Meanwhile, David's closing a $50 million supplier contract. That's real business. What my father didn't see, what he refused to see, was that I wasn't failing, I was learning. Every investment, successful or not, taught me something about business models, market timing, and due diligence. The small VC firm where I started gave me access to hundreds of pitch decks, exposing me to emerging technologies and disruptive business strategies. I studied how founders thought, how markets shifted, how industries got disrupted. 3 years into my VC career, I made my first major win. A small logistics software company I'd championed got acquired for $200 million. My firm's return was 40x. My personal carry was $800,000. I didn't tell my family. What was the point? To my father, software wasn't real business. Instead, I rolled that money into my next opportunity. By 2019, I'd left the VC firm to start my own private equity fund, Apex Capital Partners. The name was intentional. Apex predators sit at the top of the food chain. They're patient, strategic, and when they move, it's decisive. I raised $50 million from 3 family offices who'd watched my track record. None of them were named Chen. Apex's strategy was simple but contrarian. We targeted traditional manufacturing companies that were technologically stagnant but operationally sound. Companies run by aging founders who understood their industries but couldn't adapt to digital transformation. We'd acquire controlling stakes, bring in technical expertise, modernize operations, and dramatically increase valuations. In 3 years, we'd acquired 7 companies and quintupled our fund size to $250 million. My father knew none of this. To him, I was still playing venture capital roulette with other people's money, still chasing tech fantasies instead of building real businesses. At family gatherings, which I attended less and less frequently, he'd introduce me vaguely. "This is my daughter, Sarah. She works in finance," the way someone might say she's trying to find herself. David, meanwhile, had become exactly what my father wanted. At 35, he was COO of Chen Industries, overseeing 800 employees across 3 facilities. The business press called him a rising star in manufacturing. My father called him the future of the Chen legacy. When my mother suggested I might have valuable insights about modernization, my father dismissed it immediately. "Sarah doesn't understand manufacturing. She's never worked a day in a real factory." David's been in the trenches. He knows this business. The irony was suffocating. I'd spent 9 years studying exactly how companies like Chen Industries succeeded or failed. I'd analyzed dozens of manufacturers, understood their supply chains, their technology gaps, their vulnerability to disruption. I could have helped Chen Industries adapt to changing markets, implement automation, build predictive maintenance systems. But my father never asked because he'd decided years ago that I didn't understand real business. What I did understand was that Chen Industries was in trouble. Anyone who studied their public filings could see it. Revenue was flat for 5 straight years. Margins were compressing as Asian competitors offered lower prices. R&D spending had declined to almost nothing. The company was profitable but stagnant, coasting on legacy contracts that would eventually dry up. David was a competent operator, but he wasn't innovating. He was maintaining what my grandfather and father had built, not evolving it. In late 2023, rumors started circulating that my father was exploring a sale. He was 68, ready to retire, and wanted to secure the family's financial future. David would stay on as CEO after any acquisition, ensuring the Chen name remained attached to the business. Several strategic buyers had apparently made preliminary offers, but nothing had progressed. That's when Apex Capital Partners began its quiet approach. Through intermediaries, we expressed interest in acquiring Chen Industries. We offered $420 million, a 30% premium over the highest competing bid. The offer came with conditions. Current management could stay during a transition period, but operational decisions would ultimately rest with Apex. We'd invest an additional $80 million in modernization and technology upgrades. The deal would close in 6 months, pending due diligence. My father, through his advisors, accepted. He never knew that Apex Capital Partners was my fund. I'd structured it that way deliberately. My name appeared nowhere in public filings. The firm was registered through a Delaware LLC. When my father's lawyers ran background checks, they found a legitimate private equity firm with an impressive track record of manufacturing acquisitions. They found nothing linking it to Sarah Chen. Throughout the due diligence process, I stayed invisible. My team of analysts and lawyers handled everything. We reviewed Chen Industries' books, toured the facilities, interviewed management. David, as COO, was heavily involved, answering questions about operations, supply chains, and growth strategies. He had no idea he was ultimately reporting to his little sister. The deal was scheduled to close on November 15, 2024. My father planned a celebration, an acquisition announcement event at the Waldorf Astoria. He'd invited 200 people, suppliers, customers, industry peers, family friends, local politicians. It would be his victory lap, his final public appearance as the CEO who'd successfully sold the family business and secured generational wealth. I received my invitation like everyone else, a formal card addressed to Miss Sarah Chen. The family hopes you can attend this momentous occasion. My mother had probably insisted I be invited. My father certainly hadn't thought of it. I RSVP'd yes. And I started planning for the moment when my father would learn exactly whose fantasy business was about to become his reality. The week before the acquisition announcement, I met with my team at Apex's offices in Tribeca. My COO, Jennifer Park, had been with me since the fund's inception. She'd watched me deliberately keep my identity separate from our deals, watched me build success my family never acknowledged. "Are you sure about this?" Jennifer asked, reviewing the announcement plan. "You could let them find out later, privately. Going public at the event, that's nuclear." "My father spent 9 years telling everyone I don't understand real business," I said. "He's about to stand in front of 200 industry leaders and celebrate selling his company. They deserve to know who they're celebrating with." Jennifer nodded slowly. "Okay, but once this happens, there's no going back. Your relationship with your father, with David, it's over." "It's been over," I replied. I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. The Waldorf Astoria's ballroom glittered with Manhattan wealth and industrial power. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble. Round tables seated 10 each. Place settings featuring the Chen Industries logo embossed in gold. A stage at the front held a podium with microphones, and behind it, a massive screen showing the company's 60-year history in photos. I arrived deliberately late, after cocktail hour had started. I wore a simple black dress, no jewelry, nothing flashy. I wanted to blend in, to observe. My father stood near the stage, surrounded by admirers. David worked the room like the future CEO he thought he was, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. My mother spotted me first. "Sarah," she said, surprise and relief in her voice. "You came." "I didn't think," she trailed off. "I wouldn't miss it," I said, hugging her. "Where's my table?" She checked the seating chart. "Table 18, near the back." "I'm sorry. Your father handled the arrangements." Table 18 was in the furthest corner, partially obscured by a decorative column. The people seated there were distant relatives and minor suppliers, the ones invited out of obligation rather than importance. I recognized 2 cousins I hadn't seen in years and a parts supplier from New Jersey. None of them knew what I did for a living. To them, I was just Richard Chen's daughter who worked somewhere in finance. I took my seat as dinner was served. The conversations around me were polite but distant. No one asked about my work. No one seemed particularly interested in my presence. I was the extra chair, filled because empty seats look bad at events like this. As the dessert plates were cleared, my father took the stage. The room fell silent, 200 faces turning toward the man of the hour. He looked confident, commanding, every inch the successful CEO about to crown his career with a lucrative exit. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice carrying easily across the ballroom. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate this milestone for Chen Industries and the Chen family." Applause rippled through the room. My father smiled, basking in it. 62 years ago, my father arrived in New York with $200 and a dream. He started with a single lathe in a basement in Queens. Through hard work, integrity, and commitment to quality, he built something real, something that lasts. The screen behind him showed grainy photos of my grandfather in the original shop, young and determined, surrounded by machines. When I took over in 1995, I made a promise to my father. I would protect his legacy. I would grow this company. I would ensure the Chen name stood for excellence in American manufacturing. More applause. David, seated at the head table near the stage, nodded appreciatively. Tonight, I'm proud to say I've kept that promise. Chen Industries is stronger than ever. $400 million in annual revenue. 800 employees. Partnerships with every major automotive manufacturer in North America, and now we're taking the next step. He paused for effect, letting the anticipation build. Tonight, I'm announcing that Chen Industries has been acquired by Apex Capital Partners, a private equity firm with an impressive track record in manufacturing. This acquisition values our company at $420 million, one of the largest deals in our industry this year. The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed. People stood, giving my father a standing ovation. He smiled, holding up his hands in modest acknowledgement. This deal ensures Chen Industries will continue to thrive for generations. It secures the financial future of our family and our employees. And it allows me to retire, knowing I've fulfilled my duty to my father's memory. He gestured toward David. My son David will continue as CEO, ensuring operational continuity and maintaining the standards we've built over 6 decades. The Chen family legacy isn't ending. It's evolving. More applause. David stood, accepting congratulations from people at nearby tables. My mother wiped away tears of pride. Then my father's expression shifted slightly, taking on a more casual, almost playful tone. Of course, not everyone in the Chen family understands the value of building something real. My daughter Sarah, who's here somewhere tonight, he scanned the room vaguely, not actually looking for me, chose a different path. While David learned manufacturing from the ground up, Sarah decided that venture capital and tech startups were the future. Polite laughter scattered through the audience. My hands remained steady on my lap. I respect her choice, of course, my father continued, his tone suggesting he respected nothing of the sort. But there's a difference between gambling on apps and algorithms versus building a real business with tangible products and lasting value. Tonight is about celebrating real achievement, real business, the kind that creates jobs and builds communities. The laughter was louder now, more confident. People who knew me socially glanced toward my table, some looking embarrassed for me, others seeming to enjoy the public family dynamic. So here's to tradition. My father raised his champagne glass, to craftsmanship, to American manufacturing, and to the difference between building empires and playing with startups. The toast rippled across the room, 200 glasses raised. I didn't lift mine, I simply stood up. The movement caught my father's attention. He squinted toward my table, finally locating me in the back corner. "Ah, Sarah," he said, his tone patronizing. "I'm glad you could join us. What did you think of my remarks about real business versus tech fantasies?" The room went quiet, sensing something beyond casual family banter. All eyes turned toward me. "I think," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom, "that you're about to learn exactly what kind of business I've built." I started walking toward the stage. My heels clicked against marble, the only sound in 5,000 square feet of suspended breath. My father watched me approach, confusion beginning to cloud his confident expression. "What are you talking about?" he asked as I reached the stage stairs. I climbed them slowly, deliberately. When I reached the podium, I stood beside my father, facing the audience of 200 stunned faces. "Dad," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "let me introduce myself properly. I'm Sarah Chen, founder and managing partner of Apex Capital Partners." The silence was absolute. Then the gasps started, scattered at first, then spreading like wildfire through the crowd. My father's face went white. "No, that's impossible. Apex is a Delaware firm. I've seen the filings. You're not," his voice failed. "The filings don't list my name," I explained calmly. That was deliberate. I structured Apex to maintain my privacy during acquisitions. But I assure you, I am Apex. I raised the fund. I selected the investments. I approved the offer for Chen Industries, and as of tonight, I own your company. David had risen from his seat at the head table, his expression cycling between shock and rage. "This is insane." "Sarah, you couldn't possibly. We did due diligence. We reviewed Apex's entire portfolio." "You reviewed 7 successful manufacturing acquisitions," I confirmed. "Total portfolio value of $800 million. Average return of 280% on invested capital. All true. What your lawyers didn't catch was that the managing partner was your sister, the one who supposedly doesn't understand real business." I pulled out my phone, projecting an image onto the screen behind me. It was Apex Capital's organizational chart, my name prominently displayed at the top. My father grabbed my arm. "This is fraud. You deliberately hid your identity to manipulate me into selling." I removed his hand calmly. "Actually, Dad, it's standard private equity practice. Buyers often use holding companies and intermediaries. Your lawyers signed off on everything. The deal is completely legal and closes tomorrow." The room had erupted in whispers. Cameras were out everywhere, recording every second. "But why?" My mother's voice came from the audience, broken and confused. "Why would you do this?" I turned toward her, my expression softening slightly. "Because for 9 years, I've tried to earn Dad's respect. I've built a successful career, made smart investments, created real value. And for 9 years, he's dismissed everything I've accomplished because it wasn't manufacturing. Because it wasn't the Chen way. I looked back at my father. You just told 200 people I play with startups while adults do real business. You've said versions of that my entire career. So I decided to show you what my fantasy business can actually do. I clicked my phone again. The screen changed to show Chen Industries' financial performance over the past 5 years. Revenue flat, margins declining, R&D spending at historic lows. Here's the real business you're so proud of, I said. A company coasting on legacy contracts while competitors innovate around you. David's a competent operator, but he's not adapting to changing markets. In 5 years, Chen Industries would have been obsolete. That's not true, David protested from his table. We're profitable. We have strong relationships. You're profitable today, I agreed, but you're not investing in automation. You're not developing new materials. You're not building the technical capabilities you'll need to compete with Asian manufacturers who are doing all of those things. This company was dying slowly, and Dad was too proud to see it. My father found his voice, though it shook. So, what's your plan? Come in here with your tech arrogance and destroy what took 3 generations to build? No, I said quietly. My plan is to save it. Apex specializes in exactly this, modernizing traditional manufacturers through technology integration. Over the next 18 months, we're investing $80 million in automation, AI-driven quality control, and predictive maintenance systems. We're building the R&D capabilities you've neglected. We're positioning Chen Industries to compete for the next 60 years, not just coast on the last 60. The room was split between those filming the confrontation and those trying to process what they were witnessing. David, I continued, you can stay as COO during the transition. You know the operations. But strategic decisions go through me and my team. We're not dismantling Dad's legacy. We're ensuring it survives. David's jaw clenched. You expect me to report to my little sister? The one who's never worked a day in a factory? I expect you to report to the person who just bought your company, I corrected. The person who's built an $800 million portfolio while you've been maintaining what Grandpa and Dad created. If you can't handle that, I'll find a COO who can. My father stepped toward the microphone, trying to reclaim control. This is inappropriate. This is a celebration, not a hostile takeover announcement. It's your celebration, Dad, I said, not moving from the podium. You invited 200 people to watch you toast your success and mock my career choice. I'm just clarifying some facts. Like the fact that the real business you're so proud of defending is now owned by your daughter's fantasy tech fund. Jennifer Park appeared at the side of the stage, right on cue. She climbed the stairs carrying a leather folder. Mr. Chen, she said, addressing my father formally, I'm Jennifer Park, COO of Apex Capital Partners. These are the final acquisition documents. They require your signature tonight to close the deal tomorrow. Per the terms you've already agreed to, you have no grounds to back out. My father stared at the folder like it was a snake. I won't sign. Then you'll be in breach of contract, Jennifer replied calmly. Apex will sue for specific performance and damages. Your legal team has already confirmed you have no viable defense. You can sign tonight and walk away with $420 million, or you can sign after expensive litigation and walk away with significantly less. The threat hung in the air. My father looked at his lawyers, who'd moved near the stage. One of them nodded reluctantly. She's right, Richard. The contract is ironclad. How long? My father asked me, his voice barely a whisper. How long have you been planning this? I started building Apex 9 years ago, I said. I started targeting Chen Industries specifically about 18 months ago when rumors of your retirement began circulating. Everything since then, the offer, the due diligence, tonight, has been working toward this moment. Why? He asked again. If you wanted the company, why not just ask? Why this elaborate deception? I looked at him directly. Because you never would have sold to me. You would have rejected any offer from your daughter who doesn't understand real business. You would have taken a lower offer from someone else rather than admit I'd built something worth respecting. So I stopped asking for your approval and just took what I'd earned. The pain on his face was visceral, but I couldn't let it move me, not after 9 years of dismissal. You wanted to prove a point, he said bitterly. You wanted to humiliate me. No, I replied. I wanted to build something real and have you finally see it. The humiliation was your choice. You could have introduced me tonight as your daughter who works in finance and left it at that. Instead, you decided to mock my career in front of 200 people. I just corrected the record. Jennifer held out the folder. Mr. Chen, we need your signature. My father took the pen with shaking hands. He signed 3 times, his signature barely recognizable. When he finished, Jennifer collected the documents and handed him a copy. The deal closes at 9 a.m. Tomorrow, she announced to the room, Apex Capital Partners will take full ownership of Chen Industries. Mr. David Chen will remain as COO subject to performance review in 6 months. Mr. Richard Chen's role ends effective immediately. My father looked around the ballroom at the 200 faces staring back at him. Some showed sympathy. Others showed barely concealed fascination at the drama. No one was celebrating anymore. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. Just to me. I was proud of you. I just didn't understand what you were building. You never tried to understand, I replied. You decided 9 years ago that I was a failure and nothing I accomplished mattered because it wasn't manufacturing. You get to retire with $420 million. Dad, that's more than most people will ever see, but you don't get to rewrite history and pretend you supported me. I turned to address the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for disrupting the celebration. Chen Industries is in good hands. Apex has a track record of successful acquisitions and modernizations. I hope you'll continue your partnerships with us during this transition. I stepped away from the podium and walked off the stage. My mother intercepted me at the bottom of the stairs. Sarah, her voice broke. I don't understand why you couldn't tell us, why you couldn't trust us. Mom, I've tried to tell you for 9 years. Every time I mentioned my work, Dad dismissed it. Every achievement I shared, he minimized. I stopped trying to earn something that would never be given freely. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back gently. I'm not angry, Mom. I'm just done pretending we're something we're not. I walked through the silent ballroom, past tables of people I'd known my entire life. None of them spoke. At the exit, I paused and looked back one final time. My father stood alone on the stage, a man who'd just lost everything he thought defined him. David sat with his head in his hands. My mother stood between them, torn between the family she'd raised and the daughter who'd finally stopped accepting crumbs. The acquisition closed at 9 a.m. The next morning, Jennifer and our legal team handled the final paperwork at Chen Industries headquarters in Long Island City. I didn't attend. There was no need. The company was mine, acquired legally and irrevocably. The business press had the story by noon. Tech fund acquires Chen Industries in surprise family deal. Read the Wall Street Journal headline. Bloomberg ran a longer piece. The $420 million revenge. How Sarah Chen bought her father's company after years of dismissal. Someone had leaked video from the Waldorf event. By evening, it had 3 million views on YouTube. My phone erupted with messages. Former colleagues congratulating me. Other VCs asking about Apex's strategy. 3 major business schools requesting interviews for case studies. My mother called 17 times. I didn't answer. The only call I took was from Jennifer. How are you holding up? She asked. I'm fine, I said. How's the transition going? David showed up this morning. He tried to rally the management team against you, told them the acquisition was illegitimate. Jennifer paused. I had to let him go. I'd expected it, but the finality still stung slightly. He wouldn't report to me? He called you a vindictive child playing businesswoman. He said he'd rather quit than work for his sister. So I accepted his resignation effective immediately. Okay, I said quietly. Promote Sandra Reeves to interim COO. She's been VP of Operations for 8 years and actually understands the need for modernization. Already done, Jennifer confirmed. Sarah, the rank-and-file employees are actually excited. They've known for years that the company needed to evolve. They're ready for the changes we're planning. Good. Let's start implementation next week. I want automation assessment for all 3 facilities completed by January. After I hung up, I sat in my Tribeca apartment looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere across the water, Chen Industries was beginning its transformation. The company my grandfather built, my father maintained, and I now owned was about to enter its next chapter. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction in my father's humiliation. Just a hollow ache for the relationship that could have been if he'd ever been willing to see me clearly. 3 days after the acquisition, my father finally called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Sarah." His voice sounded older, defeated. "Can we talk?" "We're talking now. In person. Please. There are things I need to say that can't be said over the phone." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small cafe in Chelsea, neutral territory. He arrived early, already seated when I walked in. He'd aged visibly in 72 hours. The confident CEO from the Waldorf was gone, replaced by a tired man facing consequences. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat across from him. "What did you want to say?" He took a long breath. "I've spent the last 3 days trying to understand how I got you so wrong, how I missed what you were building, how I ended up selling my company to my own daughter without realizing it. And?" I asked. My tone neutral, and I realized I stopped listening to you years ago. When you chose VC over manufacturing, I decided you were rejecting everything I valued. Every success you had after that, I dismissed because it didn't fit my definition of real business. At least you're finally honest about it. His hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "Your mother tried to tell me. She kept saying I needed to pay attention to what you were actually accomplishing. But I was so sure I was right about traditional business versus tech disruption. I thought you were naive." "I was never naive, Dad. I was strategic. There's a difference." "I see that now." He looked up at me. "What you built with Apex, the portfolio, the returns, the strategy, it's remarkable. I was wrong about you." The apology should have felt satisfying. Instead, it just felt 9 years too late. "Why couldn't you see it before?" I asked. "Why did it take public humiliation for you to finally look at my actual work?" "Pride," he admitted, "and fear. You were doing something I didn't understand, in an industry I couldn't control. With David, I knew how to guide him. With you, I felt lost. So, instead of admitting that, I just decided what you were doing wasn't valuable." The cafe was quiet around us, people on laptops, oblivious to the family reckoning happening at table 7. "I'm sorry," my father said quietly, "for the comments at the Waldorf, for the 9 years before that, for not being the father who celebrated your achievements instead of dismissing them. You deserved better." "Yes," I agreed. "I did. Can you forgive me?" I thought about it carefully. Maybe eventually. But right now, I'm angry, Dad. I'm angry that it took buying your company for you to respect me. I'm angry that David got unconditional support while I had to prove myself over and over. I'm angry that you chose tradition over truth for 9 years. He nodded, accepting it. "What happens now? With Chen Industries?" "What I told you at the Waldorf. We modernize, we invest in technology, we position the company for long-term success. In 5 years, Chen Industries will be stronger than it's ever been. But I won't be part of it." "No," I said. "You chose retirement. That hasn't changed." "And David?" "Jennifer had to let him go. He wouldn't work under my authority." My father flinched. He's very angry. He feels betrayed. "He feels entitled?" I corrected. "He thought he'd inherit Chen Industries because he was the son, because he followed the traditional path. He never considered that maybe the company needed something different to survive." "You're very certain about this." "I've spent 9 years studying exactly the situation, Dad. Traditional manufacturers that fail to modernize die. I've watched it happen dozens of times. I'm not here to destroy your legacy. I'm here to ensure it survives." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Your grandfather would be proud of you. He understood adaptation. That's how he built the company, by evolving with the market." "You never told me that." "I know." My father stood slowly. "I should go. Thank you for meeting me. And Sarah, for what it's worth, I really am proud of what you've built. I just wish I'd said it 9 years ago." He left cash on the table for his coffee and walked out. I watched him through the cafe window, disappearing into Chelsea foot traffic. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished by the weight of what he'd lost through stubbornness. I finished my coffee alone, processing the conversation. His apology was real, but it couldn't erase 9 years of dismissal. It couldn't undo the public humiliation he'd inflicted, even if my response had been strategically calculated. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. They can only be mourned. The transformation of Chen Industries began in January. We brought in automation specialists from Germany, AI integration experts from Silicon Valley, and materials scientists from MIT. The $80 million investment I'd promised became $95 million when we identified additional modernization opportunities. The first changes were technological. We implemented predictive maintenance systems using IoT sensors that could identify equipment failures before they happened, reducing downtime by 35%. We installed collaborative robots in assembly processes, not replacing workers, but augmenting them, increasing productivity while reducing workplace injuries. The second wave of changes was cultural. Sandra Reeves, the new COO, implemented open innovation practices. Workers who'd been on the floor for decades suddenly had channels to suggest improvements. We created a $5 million innovation fund for employee-driven projects. Within 3 months, we'd implemented 47 new efficiency improvements, all originating from the people who actually did the work. The financial results were immediate. First quarter under Apex ownership, revenue up 12%. Second quarter, up 18%. By the end of year 1, Chen Industries posted its best financial performance in a decade. We'd attracted 3 new major contracts from automotive manufacturers who'd been skeptical of the company's ability to meet modern technical specifications. More importantly, employee satisfaction scores jumped dramatically. People who'd been demoralized by years of stagnation suddenly had purpose and agency. The average age of our workforce dropped as we hired young engineers excited about working for a modernizing manufacturer. Chen Industries became a case study in successful private equity transformation. The business press ate it up. Forbes ran a feature, How Sarah Chen Saved Her Father's Company by Buying It. Harvard Business Review published a case study analyzing the acquisition and subsequent transformation. I was invited to speak at manufacturing conferences, private equity summits, and business schools. Through all of it, I maintained the boundary I'd established. My father and David were out. Chen Industries was moving forward without them. The calls from family members became a second wave of reckoning. My mother called weekly, begging me to reconcile with my father. Your father made mistakes, but he's still your father. Families forgive. Mom, I love you, I told her during one of these calls. But I'm not ready to forgive something that took 9 years to accumulate. Dad spent almost a decade telling me I wasn't good enough. I don't owe him instant forgiveness just because he's finally realized he was wrong. David never called. Instead, he gave interviews to business publications, positioning himself as the victim of a corporate coup. My sister used deception to steal our family company, he told Bloomberg. She manipulated our father's trust and destroyed family bonds for personal gain. The narrative didn't stick. Too many people had seen the Waldorf video. Too many industry insiders knew Chen Industries' performance under David had been stagnant. When reporters asked me about his accusations, I simply directed them to Apex's track record and Chen Industries' improved financials. Extended family split into camps. Some sided with my father and David, viewing my actions as betrayal regardless of business justification. Others quietly congratulated me, admitting they'd always known I was underestimated. A few cousins who'd watched the family dynamics for years reached out to say it was about time someone challenged the old guard. The only family relationship I maintained was with my mother, though it was strained. She loved my father and struggled to accept that his treatment of me had been genuinely harmful rather than just parental concern. She wanted the family reunion that couldn't happen. Thanksgiving 2025 was the first major holiday after the acquisition. My mother called in October. Will you come to Thanksgiving dinner? Please, Sarah. Your father misses you. David's been difficult, but maybe if we're all together. I can't, Mom. Not yet. Maybe next year? How long are you going to punish him? I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. She cried. I let her, knowing there was nothing I could say that would make this easier for any of us. Instead of family Thanksgiving, I spent the holiday with my team at Apex. Jennifer, our analysts, and several executives from our portfolio companies. We gathered in my apartment, sharing food and discussing not family drama, but the businesses we were building together. These people had seen my work and valued it from the beginning. This was my chosen family now. During dinner, Jennifer raised her glass to Sarah, who showed us all that sometimes the best revenge is building something they said you couldn't. It's not revenge, I corrected quietly. It's validation. There's a difference. The first-year anniversary of the acquisition arrived in November 2025. Chen Industries had exceeded every projection. Revenue was up 22% year over year. We'd added 200 new jobs, mostly in engineering and technical roles. The company's valuation had increased to $580 a million, up 38% from the purchase price. The industry recognition followed. Chen Industries won Manufacturing Company of the Year from the National Association of Manufacturers. I was named Private Equity Professional of the Year by the American Investment Council. The transformation was being studied at business schools across the country. My father sent me a letter for the anniversary. It arrived at Apex's offices, hand-delivered by courier. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper, with my name written in his careful handwriting. "Dear Sarah," the letter began. "A year ago today, I stood at the Waldorf Astoria, thinking I was celebrating the culmination of my career. Instead, I was participating in my own humiliation, earned through years of dismissing you. I've spent this year watching from a distance as you've transformed Chen Industries. Every quarterly report, every industry award, every piece of business press coverage has been a reminder of what I failed to see. You weren't rejecting manufacturing when you chose technology. You were seeing the future of it. Your grandfather taught me that business success requires adaptation. I forgot that lesson and nearly destroyed what took 3 generations to build. You remembered it and saved the company I was too proud to admit was struggling. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that every day, I think about the dinner conversations where I dismissed your work, the family gatherings where I compared you unfavorably to David, the years I spent being certain I was right about what constituted real business. I was wrong about all of it. Chen Industries thrives because you had the vision I lacked and the strength to execute it despite my opposition. Your mother tells me you're doing well, that you're building more companies, that you're happy. I'm glad. You deserve happiness I made difficult to find. I'm proud of you, Sarah. I should have said it 9 years ago. I should have said it every year since. I'm saying it now, knowing it's insufficient but hoping it matters anyway. With love and respect I failed to show when it mattered, Dad." I read the letter 3 times in my office, alone. The apology was deeper than our cafe conversation, more thoughtful, clearly written over multiple drafts. It was everything I'd wanted to hear for 9 years. And it still wasn't enough. I filed the letter in my desk drawer next to the incorporation documents for Apex Capital Partners. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday the wound would heal enough for reconciliation. But not today. Today, I had a company to run and a portfolio to expand. I had proven everything I needed to prove, not to my father, but to myself. The Chen Industries story became part of Apex's pitch to future acquisition targets. We'd successfully modernized a traditional manufacturer, preserved jobs while increasing productivity, and delivered returns that exceeded our investors' expectations. We became known not as corporate raiders, but as modernization specialists who respected legacy while building future capability. Over the following year, we acquired 4 more manufacturing companies, all similar to Chen Industries, traditional businesses run by aging founders who knew they needed to evolve but didn't know how. Each time, I thought about my father's assumptions, about how he decided that tech and manufacturing were separate worlds that couldn't coexist. He'd been wrong. The future of manufacturing was technology. The future of technology was practical application. I existed in both worlds because they weren't actually separate. They'd only seemed that way to people who refused to look carefully at what was really happening in modern business. By 2026, Apex Capital Partners managed $1.2 billion across 12 manufacturing companies. Our portfolio companies employed 8,000 people, produced $2 billion in annual revenue, and represented a new model for how traditional industries could adapt and thrive in a technological age. I'd become exactly what my father insisted I couldn't be, a successful business leader in real manufacturing, just not through the path he'd prescribed. The validation didn't come from his eventual acceptance. It came from results, from companies transformed, from workers employed, from value created. Looking back now, I don't regret buying my father's company. I don't regret the public revelation at the Waldorf. What happened that night needed to happen. My father needed to face the consequences of 9 years of dismissal. I needed to stop seeking approval that would never come freely. Was it revenge? Maybe partly, but more than that, it was liberation. Liberation from trying to fit into a definition of success I never believed in. Liberation from a family structure that valued tradition over truth. Liberation from the exhausting performance of pretending dismissal didn't hurt. The relationship with my father remains complicated. We're not estranged, exactly. We're cordial when necessary, distant by mutual understanding. He attends some industry events where I'm speaking. He's seen me win awards he never thought I'd earn. The pride in his eyes is real now, but it coexists with the shame of knowing he nearly destroyed something precious through stubborn blindness. David and I haven't spoken since the acquisition. He's working for a manufacturing company in Ohio, doing competent work far from the spotlight he once enjoyed. I wish him well, genuinely. His failure wasn't inability. It was his misfortune to be groomed for leadership in a company that needed someone different. He was the right person for maintaining what existed. I was the right person for transforming it into what it needed to become. My mother and I have reached an understanding. She loves my father, can't help that, and wishes the family was intact. But she's also proud of what I've built, even if the path was painful for everyone involved. We have lunch monthly, just the two of us. We talk about business, about life, about everything except whether I'll reconcile with my father. That topic has become off limits by silent agreement. The lesson I take from all of this is simple but hard one. Your value isn't determined by people who refuse to see it, even if those people are family. Especially if those people are family. The most loving thing you can sometimes do is stop trying to convince them and simply build your own proof. I spent 9 years trying to earn my father's respect through achievements he'd never acknowledge. The moment I stopped seeking his approval and started building success on my own terms was the moment I actually became successful in ways that mattered. Chen Industries thrives not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to prove that my vision of business had value. The company my grandfather started, my father grew, and I now own represents 3 generations of different approaches to the same goal, creating something that lasts. I don't know if my father and I will ever fully reconcile. Maybe as he gets older, as the sharp edges of hurt and pride dull with time, we'll find our way back to something resembling a relationship. Maybe not. Either way, I'll be okay. Because at the end of the day, I don't need his validation anymore. I have a $1.2 billion portfolio, 12 thriving companies, 8,000 employees who depend on the decisions I make, and the satisfaction of knowing I was right about the future of manufacturing when everyone who mattered to me said I was wrong. My father wanted me to understand real business. I finally do. It's not about stethoscopes versus spreadsheets, tradition versus innovation, or manufacturing versus technology. Real business is about creating value, adapting to change, and having the courage to pursue your vision, even when the people closest to you insist you're wrong. I learned that lesson the hard way, by buying my father's company and proving everything he dismissed for 9 years. Some people might call that excessive. I call it necessary. The girl who played with tech fantasies grew up to save her father's manufacturing empire, not because she wanted his approval anymore, but because she finally stopped needing it. And that makes all the difference.